Medrash in Breishis, in the beginning of the Chumash, Talmudic commentary on Genesis, gives a listing of the future exiles that Klal Yisrael will have. And last one that's listed is Edom. And spilling into Edom is the Greek exile, which was here in Eretz Yisrael, which is a reference to the time of the Hashmonaim, of the Chanukah story. They made an enigmatic statement, the Greeks, and they said, write on the horns of an ox that you have no part in the God of Israel. What does it mean? There are various interpretations been offered over the years, very esoteric statement. One possibility of trying to understand it, that a little over 100 years before the story of Chanukah was the Septuagint. That was the Hellenistic king in Egypt, Talmai, brought 70 scholars without telling in advance why they were coming. Last minute, he sprang it on them that they have to translate the Bible, the Torah, written text into Greek. Put in separate cubicles, they had no time to consult, and yet miraculously, they all came out with the same translations, exact translation, and even with euphemisms in places where it had to be politically correct, instead of getting into discussions that are explicated by the Talmud, such as verse says, we will create man. It means God, but God consults, the Talmud teaches, with the celestial court. God doesn't have to consult, but it's didactic. It's to teach us that we should consult. Such variations, they skipped the question and answer, and they just went to the singular. And they said, I will create. And there's a listing in the Talmud of where they made their euphemistic divergences. Question is that less than 100 years it took for them to understand, the Greeks, that they had won a battle that did promote Hellenization. It was miraculous. But now the Greeks could say, you don't have to go to Panovich, Tervedas, Chaim Berlin. You can come to the university in Philadelphia and Alexandria, and you can study the text of the Torah. So they won that battle, but they didn't win the war. The Talmud likens it to the lion that was formerly roaming free was now caged. They didn't have the oral law. What they wanted then, when they understood that in order to promote and infiltrate into the psyche, the spirit of the Jew, they have to have access to the oral law, they said, Kisvu al Kenoshor, write down the oral law, freeze it, and then we will in fact be able to force you to translate that as well. Later, when the time came for it to be written down, when Rabbi Yehuda Nossi decides that it should be written down, that's an internal decision and will be expedited with our criteria and our norms according to the halacha. But had it been done earlier, it in fact would have created that problem. And so, Chanukah is the celebration of our resistance. When it's recorded in Al HaNisim, in the prayer that we recite on Chanukah, that they wanted us to forget our Torah, it means they wanted us to stop our engagement with the oral law in our manner, which is unique and passed from generation to generation, from Rabbi to Talmud, from each teacher to his disciple. That remains the unique province of the Jewish people, and that's what's celebrated on Chanukah. So not only did they not win in their battle against this spiritual, intellectual battle against the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, but we wind up with a new holiday, which is in fact purely an expression of the oral law. Because without the mandate of the oral law, there could be no Chanukah, which is initiated by rabbinic legislation. That's in fact what has been achieved with the Chanukah. Then we could say there's a special dimension in Chanukah called Hidur mitzvah, to beautify the mitzvah. That which wicks, which oil you use, each member of the household lighting the candle, using more than one candle, Hidur mitzvah, beautifying the mitzvah. It's rare that we find that Hidur mitzvah has so been integrated into the norm of the acceptance of the practice of the community as being an integral part. And perhaps we could say that that is in fact the measure for measure, the midah keneged midah, that's the balance, the irony, that our beautifying of Torah is by seeing the levels of the text, the texture of the text, seeing the different plateaus of inference and implication, which can only be accessed through the oral law. That's our beautification of it. And that's why the brother of the Maharal says when we make a party, a siyum for the conclusion of studying a tractate, we say, Hadroch Olon, your beauty is on us, God, and our beauty is on you. Says the brother of the Maharal in the Sefer HaChaim, what does it mean our beauty is on you? Because we carry the oral law, and we know that's the only way to access the soul of the text of the written law, which then remains again unique to Am Yisrael. That's the celebration of the lights, that's the celebration of Chanukah, that's the miracle that has been preserved by Jews throughout the millennia.